Oh, yeah.
This is related a little bit because you just mentioned it, but for all of his being out for himself and everything, when he was in charge of someone or someone was on his side, there was kind of a code of the barbarian that he adhered to, where kind of like, you know, he wouldn't leave them behind, you would have his loyalty, he would have your back. And so there was some kind of code, even when he was pretty lawless, that he adhered to if you were on his team.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a code, like, and that's one of the things I pointed out in the article. It's he has his like moral sense and sense of honor, but it's something like, he wrote it for himself. He didn't learn it in school. He didn't learn it in church. He didn't learn it in the Boy Scouts. It's just something, very natural to him. He just, he decided this is how he was going to be.
And in my mind, it seemed to grow with him as he grew, and it became the responsibility of the king.
Because he, I think he was able to take on like responsibility when he was, in positions of leadership, because he was able to. And that's. This is one of the things I was going to get into my speech later tonight. Like in making himself so formidable, when he, sees something he doesn't like, he's able to do something about it. It's not like, can't call 911, I guess it's all on me. And he goes and does something. And in fact, at one point in my life, I remember like one afternoon, I was like sort of giving to wonder, what would I be like if I were as tough as Conan? And, and I sort of like pondered over it, and I thought, well, I think if I was tough as Conan, I'd be like a lot like Conan. I mean, I'd sort of be a do-gooder, but I wouldn't feel inclined to be like some sort of sweetie pie who's like, there, now don't do that. I just be like, hey jerk, quit bothering that girl. Yeah.
Yeah, amongst all Howard's characters, do you find an exception, a character that's more purpose-driven, or do you find them all pretty much existential, like Conan?
No, Conan's like existential, like, I think in like the critical study, like, I mentioned these fantasy characters as like sort of a progression in the way of his thinking. Like I mentioned, like Bran McMorn can be seen as a political man. His main purpose is affecting change in the social order. It's get rid of the Romans, preserve the pigs. Solomon Kane's like the religious man, the man of faith. Cull is, the thinking man, the philosophical man. But all of these things like politics and, religion and philosophy, like, as important as they may be, they also have like sort of like, dangerous pitfalls that can trip you up. Like in politics in the form of like extremism, religion, fanaticism, like, philosophy, like it can just like sort of devolve into like a sort of like navel gazing, where you just like, get caught up in these conundrums and you can't stop your mind from racing. And finally you get to like Conan, who's like, comes after all of those, and he's like, the free existential man. He's like a very healthy-minded character. For a lot of writers, they create like characters who are like behind them in some way, less mature than they are. But I think like in creating his characters, like one of the nice things about Howard as a writer is like it was his way of like sort of looking ahead, like like sort of seeking the direction he should be headed in. And it's too bad he had to like stop writing Conan. It's like kind of a tragedy, because I think in creating Conan he was trying to forge a way into like a more clear-headed way of just like dealing with the world very directly in all of its complexity. It's like I think as Mark and I said in the book, like intricate like Gordian knots of dooms and menaces are cut by Conan's sword, and that's what Conan does. He just like he's very direct, just gets through to the heart of the matter and doesn't allow things to trip him up. And and it's like very tragic that for financial reasons, because he wasn't getting paid by Weird Tales, he had to abandon Conan. Because in his letter, like you can tell, like Conan was still very much alive to him. He was not yet done with the character. He just had to stop writing him because he wasn't getting paid. And also, like he had turned 30, and 30 can be a very dangerous age. It's like when you're more aware of like responsibilities, and it's like okay, I gotta like stop screwing around. I can't just do what I want. I gotta knuckle down to brass tacks. Okay, people like these funny westerns, so I'll write a bunch of those, and people enjoy them, and I'll be making pretty good money, and everything will be fine if I don't blow my brains out. Anything else? Anyone? Yeah.
You mentioned actually several times the Phoenix on the Sword, which, if I remember correctly, actually started life as a Cole the Conqueror story. And you, as you've said a couple times, it contains some of the themes that aren't really fully realized. It does have the air of the fantastic. How do you feel about that as possibly a sign that Howard was either working out his philosophy in that first story as he was rewriting it, or perhaps as a transitional story between one sort of fantasy, sorcery, sword and sorcery writing into what he ultimately became, into what Conan ultimately became?
Wow, that's like such a great point. I hope everybody heard that. Somebody could like do like a very, now that you mention it, somebody could do like a very fine, outstanding essay, like blow by blow comparison by this exact rule, the Phoenix on the sword, like what he kept the same, and and what he changed, and it's like sort of interesting that like the Phoenix on the Sword had its genesis in an unsolved Cull story. Conan, despite superficial similarities, being like very different characters, and he had to step away from that, and like somebody, I forget exactly who, or I'd give them proper credit, was like talking about the original draft of the Phoenix on the Sword that Farnsworth Wright told him to tighten up a bit, and he chopped this whole lengthy like excerpt where like Conan gets like very depressed and like just downs like a couple shots of booze, or goblets or flagons or whatever, and starts to feel better, and like somebody wrote, like when Howard took out that section, he like really broke the last links with Cull, because like like I may mention like there's that bit in the introduction to the first story, Phoenix on the Sword, where it talks about Conan's like, you know, you got the gigantic melancholy and gigantic mirth. Well, like one of the things we tried to point out in the book is like Conan, you know, he is mentioned as being like sullen and moody or whatever, but he's never really shown that way. You know, like you know, the aspect of Conan where more often is shown is like you know, one of like vitality, humor, good spirits, charisma. You know, like he was like just one of those guys you can understand why people would follow him into hell, because he was just like you know, like you know, like so dynamic. You know, like that if like you were like a young guy, you could like just like, you know, sort of like you know, imagine yourself like racing off with him. He was just had that kind of like inner light that you know, people responded to, that like sort of you know, like charisma and, you know, leadership quality.
That was Patrice Lounet.
Patrice said that. Oh, great! It was like okay, yeah, because I do try to, you know, give credit whenever possible, because, you know, you just can't think of everything. So if you happen to recall somebody, because I'll mention things that like somebody else said and I might not remember who. If you remember the source, like, please jump in, because, yeah, I do want to give credit where it's due. Okay, anything else? Yes?
Just thinking about the one other character who really kind of explicitly tries to figure out life is a minor character from one of the Gordon stories, Al-Wazir. And he goes out to the desert to contemplate, you know, the meaning of life with the help of the Bhagavad Gita. By the end of the story, he says, yeah, I figured it out. It's not sitting in the desert.
Yeah, like
you gotta get off your butt and help people. You know, make something out of yourself.
yeah, I remember that story. Like when they finally find him, he's like just like this ragged bum.
He's gone insane.
Yeah, he's gone insane. Yeah, it's like you ever see like the movie Monty Python's The Meaning of Life? You know, like they go through this whole movie with all these different sketches, and like right at the end, and like, oh, was there anything else? Oh yeah, the meaning of life. Well, just you know, eat your vegetables, get some rest. Yeah, they just rattled off in like 2 seconds. That was pretty funny. Yeah.
So just kind of following on that, and what you were saying earlier about, you know, the times where Conan does seem to break this pure existentialist attitude and do what we might consider something a good thing or a good, you know, is he trending more towards humanism? Maybe would that be a better way to describe Conan? And maybe, you know, Al-Wazir, it's be good to people, you know, but for no reason beyond, you know, just being good. You know.
It was interesting in the context of the Gordon stories, because Gordon, I find him very much a contrast to Conan in that his, as you say, all those characters, they have something that moves them. Gordon's is loyalty to his friends. In any Gordon story, he's not looking for a treasure. It's because he's doing what he's doing because a friend is in danger. And you know, I was kind of thinking about how you were comparing. You're saying what sets Conan apart. What makes him a true existentialist?
Yeah, Conan is also like, you know, like very loyal to his friends, except for the ones where he's king. They're like really no recurring characters. But yeah, I think the fact that I think friend was like a big word to Howard, because like he really saw the world as against him, and he had very few friends, and you know, those he valued very greatly. And another thing, like in creating these characters who are like rogues and outlaws, you sort of pull back to, you know, to differentiate them from like out and out villains. You have to give them like a redeeming trait, and for like El Barak and like Conan and even Wild Bill Clanton, like a redeeming trait they share is like sympathy for the underdog. You know, like because it's like these characters, they sort of realize, you know, even though they happen to be big and strong and tough enough to like deal with whatever, you know, the world or the universe might happen to throw at them, you know, they sort of realize, well, it sure would suck not to be able to. So, you know, when they see someone who's like just like really getting a like a raw deal from some like you know, miserable rat, you know, they just, you know, don't take kindly to it, and then they go and, you know, do something about it. Yep. Okay, you first.
So, Solomon Kane, earlier character, very much rooted in a very specific religious philosophy, 16th century Puritanism. In what ways do you think that character reflects Howard's philosophies?
Well, sure, Howard was struck by many philosophies, like Solomon Kane is like a, you know, fascinating character. I love Kane to death. Like, you know, Robert M. Price, whom you may be familiar with, in addition to being, you know, writing many essays on fantasy and stuff, he's like a religious scholar of note. And he said that, like, it seemed to him like was that Kane was more of a Puritan than he was a Christian. And, you know, I see something sort of in that. You know, it's Howard, as far as like, you know, like Kane is concerned, like the thing we have to remember, like about Solomon Kane, is he's not a barbarian. He is a civilized man, and therefore, you know, as cool and awesome as he is, he's, you know, burdened to some extent, you know, by the trappings of, you know, civilization. You know, in fact, you know, possibly his religious upbringing. He was born into, you know, Puritanism, which is very strict, but all of his instincts are like, you know, are to be like, you know, like he's sort of like, you know, aggressive. He has a very forceful, dynamic personality, which sort of like leads him, I think, to like sort of rewrite the tradition he inherited. And I think that's how he takes it, you know, upon himself to like, you know, right wrongs, scour the earth of evildoers. And you know, that one line I love so much, it is fallen upon me at times in my sojourn through the world to ease various evil men of their lives. I don't know if that answers the question or not. Probably not. Okay, yes?
It almost seems to me like Howard's philosophy develops as suggesting that existentialism is only a step, and it's by its very nature limited, because as you start out the existentialist, you're looking for a purpose, you're looking for something you're looking for how to make your life, and eventually you find that purpose, as Conan found purpose in what he was doing in his relationships, in his travels, and ultimately transitioned from being purely self-motivated to having some purpose drive him.
Yeah, I suppose, like, you know, like it's, it might even be more accurate to say that, you know, his saga and Howard's writing contains elements of existentialism, because he wasn't actually trying to, like, frame a coherent step-by-step philosophy. It's just that he was expressing, like, sort of like attitudes that, you know, parallel, you know, existential thought. You know, philosophers like Sartre, like, starts out with like basically like an attitude, you know, or a mindset that rose in reaction to many things, like, you know, the chaos of the First World War, the discoveries concerning the true scope of the universe and things like that, and had to like sit down and sort of like systematize it, and like and what happened was you ended up with like a book like being in nothingness. It's like this thick, and that's what people like August Derleth and L. Sprague de Camp are. They're the great systematizers, like Lovecraft and Howard are the visionaries, and and then August Derleth, he's like sort of like the systematizer. He really tries to put everything in its place, this deity has this counterpart, and if Cthulhu was a water elemental, which he assumed just because he lived in the ocean, well, there ought to be a fire elemental too, so I'll create one. And basically he's trying to and the camp is the same way, he just couldn't accept the Conan saga as just a cycle of standalone stories which can be read independently. He was very much interested in writing passages so as to fill gaps in the saga, as he famously said. It's just that I believe he was trained as an engineer. He had a very clean, orderly mind that just didn't tolerate ambiguity very well. Whereas Howard was a visionary, and he could just put it out there, and that's a big part of the power of his work. Lies in the subconscious and the unconscious. In an article I did not so long ago, I mentioned that in the story Zuthal of the Dusk, and in The Hour of the Dragon, written a year and a half later, they have two femme fatale characters, Thalos and Akivasha, and they're introduced in almost the identical same way. And that is Conan's first sight of them. They're he sees them framed in a doorway or a passageway. And it's Howard, he had this pipeline to the unconscious. It's archetypal. It's they're standing in this threshold, and it's luring him to the brink of who knows what. It's very primal and powerful, but somebody like L. Sprague de Camp, they sort of sacrifice that when they insist on dragging everything into consciousness, into the light of day, whereas sometimes it's just better to be dreamlike and mysterious and poetic.
Yeah.
What?
Wrap up.
Oh, gee, I'm almost done already. I thought I wouldn't have enough to say, but thanks for your thoughtful questions. I think this turned out pretty well. I thought there would actually be a few more people, and I didn't really have anything prepared for this. So I just thought we'd be batting ideas around. So I was sort of glad I asked for your help, because the things you brought up, it made me think of things that I might not otherwise thought of. That's good. I mean, it may have gone off topic and may have gone in different directions, but that's the point. I mean, when I wrote this, I didn't want it to end there. It was supposed to be the beginning, and it was, and it has sort of gone off in all different directions, and that's it couldn't have worked out better as far as I'm concerned.